It can be really tricky these days finding that perfect PC monitor. You know, you think you found the right size or the right specs, but then you find out that the refresh rate isn't high enough, or it uses the wrong kind of panel, or it runs FreeSync instead of G-Sync. Now, if you're in that ultra-wide gaming monitor market, then there are some good options out there from LG, Samsung, other big brands like Acer and Asus, but generally, at least from my experience, they fell short in some way or another, whether it was the fact that it had a max refresh rate of 60 Hz, which for me was too low, or it ran FreeSync instead of G-Sync. I use an NVIDIA graphics card, so I needed that G-Sync. So if your budget allows it, I think I may have just found the perfect gaming monitor, and it is this ultra-wide Alienware AW3418DW. It's a 34-inch ultra-wide monitor with just about every single option box ticked. It overclocks to 120 Hz for really smooth gameplay. It has G-Sync for those using NVIDIA graphics cards and don't want any kind of screen tearing. It runs a 3440 by 1440p resolution over a curved screen. It's got low response and input lag times, and it uses an IPS panel, which is generally considered better than VA or TN panels when it comes to color reproduction. So before doing this review, I really wanted to give this screen a proper test. So I've had it for about 4 or 5 weeks now, and I was really worried it wasn't going to live up to its expectations, because this thing cost me about £800, which is probably around $1,000, something like that if you're in the States. So it's a lot of money, but luckily after a month I am super pleased with it. Obviously the main thing when you're playing on a big monitor like this, the big thing that really shouted out to me when I first used it was that ultra wide, you know, aspect ratio, the 21:9. Coming from a 16:9 aspect ratio, it just blows you away. All that extra visibility, all that extra immersion that you get from having no black bars on the side, and you just get extra angles, basically extra field of view, is amazing. You know, in any FPS game, I play a lot of Fortnite, Overwatch, Titanfall 2, Battlefield 1, those kind of games. It's just absolutely amazing having that extra screen space on the side, and it's also useful if you're just kind of browsing and doing stuff on your desktop. It's just extra screen support that you've got to use. Now, one of the most noticeable things I found compared to my old monitor, which was an S2417DG, I think they call it, from Dell, very different monitor, flat screen, no curve, 165 Hz, so slightly higher refresh rate than the Alienware, and also a TN panel. The biggest difference I found between these two panels was the TN versus the IPS. So on the TN panel on the old Dell, I would find that colours weren't particularly accurate. You know, skin tones looked quite yellow. If you're in a game like Fortnite, which is really vibrant colours, then the green was almost a pastel green rather than an authentic grass green. The browns weren't quite right. Everything just didn't really pop. It just popped in the wrong way. It had quite fake, artificial looking colours, whereas the IPS on the Alienware, it needs a bit of setting up once you get it, and there are quite a few guides on the internet on how to do that properly, but once it is set up, everything looks so much more natural. The grass looks like the green that it should, the sky, the blue sky looks how it should. Everything is just a lot more accurate. And the other thing was the drop from 165 Hz to 120 Hz for this monitor. I was quite worried that I was going to notice that, and to be honest, I haven't really. There are maybe some occasions here and there where I think if I went back to the old monitor, the 165 Hz, I would maybe feel that it was slightly, like ever so slightly more crispy, but not enough to notice it, and not enough to not make me want to use this monitor. One of the things that I really like about the Alienware AW34 is that it doesn't kind of scream that gamer aesthetic in your face. If you look at brands like Asus and Acer, they've very much got a lot of RGB lighting. They've got kind of garish colors like gold and bright red on their things, and it indicates that, you know, this is for a gamer. There are a lot of people that probably game and also use their monitors in an office environment with other people and don't want that kind of a product on their desk, and I think this monitor suits that perfectly. It's got a really smart aluminium grey colour scheme to both the monitor and the base. Speaking of which, the base is super sturdy. Again, there's no kind of gamer aesthetic on it. It's got a sleek blade design. It's very heavy, extremely sturdy base. And it's just a nice, smart looking monitor and a really nice setup altogether. And if you are into RGB, there are lights on there, however they're customizable, so if you want them turned off or on, that's up to you to decide. I'm going to leave a link down below to the official Dell website where you can see all of the specs on this monitor. What I wanted to do in this review was leave a personal review of my experience with this monitor. In terms of its performance, I'm unbelievably pleased. The width of it, the size of it, all that kind of stuff, absolutely perfect. The refresh rate means that you get super smooth gameplay. The G-Sync just automatically is detected by a computer, so if you are running an NVIDIA graphics card, all of that is pretty much set up straight away. I love the color reproduction once it was set up. All of that stuff, 100% box ticked, and that's coming from a PC gamer who's used a lot of different monitors. As I said, I've used a 1440p resolution Dell before with 165Hz frame rate, and I'm quite happy dropping down to the low refresh rate. This thing absolutely does the job, and having that 21:9 aspect ratio is unbelievable. 100%, it is worth the leap. And it's not a leap of faith. You'll get it. You will absolutely love it. The only thing I would say is that when you do get this monitor, usually whenever I've bought a screen, it's just been plug and play, super easy, and that's it. It works. This one was slightly different. I plugged it in, it did work, but after about 5 minutes, I was getting this really weird stuttering and jaggering on my screen. So if I moved the mouse, it was literally lagging. Now, I run a very powerful graphics card and a decent CPU, so I knew it wasn't hardware based. So after about a day of researching and doing all kind of downloads and reinstalls and all that kind of stuff, I worked out that it must have been something to do with the drivers. So I went to the Alienware website where you can download the official driver for this screen, which you absolutely need. The other thing that you need to make sure you have is the GeForce Experience drivers, all up to date as well, because once I finally installed all the latest versions of those, that's when this monitor started working correctly, and it's been absolutely perfect ever since, and that was about 4 or 5 weeks ago. If you do decide to get this monitor, the other thing to keep an eye out on is IPS bleed when you first get the monitor. So all monitors, all their types, all the technology, they all have their issues. With TN, it generally is color reproduction. You don't get very accurate colors. With VA panels, I think a lot of people get ghosting. And finally, with IPS panels, one of the biggest issues that people have is bleeding in the corners. So you get literally a hue of light in each of the corners, and it's just really irritating and distracting. I was really fortunate with my Alienware. I didn't have any of that. I play games late at night, all the lights are off, and I don't see any of that IPS bleed. However, it's obviously done on batch numbers, and you know, you might be lucky, you might not be, but generally, because Alienware is owned by Dell, the quality control is a lot better than other brands. I'm not going to say which ones. However, you know, if you stick with LG, Samsung, and Dell, generally you get better quality control. So I may have been lucky with my Alienware. However, from what I've read online, people have generally good experiences with this monitor. So that concludes the AW3418DW review. If you've got any questions, just drop me a line down below, leave a comment, leave a like if you like the video, and please subscribe. Thank you.